Terrific. Thanks for joining us this morning, everybody. We know that you have a lot of choices when it comes to breakout rooms, so we're glad that you chose this one. Please, my name is Kyle Bowen, Executive Director of Learning Experience here in UTL. I'm joined today with my co-agitator, Allison Hall. Good morning, Allison.
Hello.
Today, we're talking about exploring Agile experiences. And to start this off, we thought we'd kind of kick it off with a discussion question this morning that was prompted by President Crow's comment this morning. He mentioned something around the effect of, for everything we do, somebody told us it was impossible. And so if we think about, the history of big ideas is hung on a timeline of things that have worked and things that haven't. But we have all had kind of impossible ideas. So that's our discussion question to start things off. What is an impossible idea that you have had? So feel free to just hit the unmute button and share that with the group. Maybe it was something that you tried to cook that you thought would be good. Maybe it was a project that kind of didn't seem like it could be done. Maybe you wanted to invent or create something. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to think about what an impossible idea might be. But when you think about your history, your timeline of big ideas, what was an impossible idea that you had?
That I would ever finish college. Oh, the irony.
Oh, that's a big one, right? That for us, it's core to our mission. How do we help people succeed? That's an excellent, Chris. Other big ideas.
I wanted to figure out how to bring students into project-based work for internship opportunities. I see lots of students that want internships. I know that we need a lot of help. It seems like a magical opportunity. So I see some rumblings about it, but still working.
Hey, there it is. There it is. Thank you, Tara. Other impossible ideas we have out there.
Actively having our students participate in QA.
Right? Somebody's like, oh gosh, how do you ever get a student to participate in a quality assurance process, right? Absolutely.
Practicing Agile in higher ed. I thought that would be impossible.
Oh, very timely. Very timely. Other impossible ideas.
There's two in the chat, Kyle, from Terry. I thought it would be impossible to teach mindfulness virtually. Turns out it is very possible and more accessible to many who would not attend in person. That was one. And then from Joshua, I tried to see if UTO could donate laptops to low-income zone schools to help bridge the digital divide.
Sure, and so that's where, and that's where over the past year, think about all of the things that we have accomplished and done that previously would have seemed impossible, right? They just imagine all of the endless committee meetings and conversations that would have had to have taken place years ago for all that we have accomplished in the last year. And so much of that has been the result of our kind of crafting and engaging in Agile experiences. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison to kind of walk through where we're going to go over the next few minutes.
Absolutely. So all those were such a fantastic kickoff for one of the impossible ideas that we're going to talk about, which is, as Christine set us up for, ASU Sync, the 100-day institutional transformation, how to turn that all around in 100 days. And so we're going to talk through some of the strategies that brought the community together to make that possible, because all of the ideas that were listed were about collaboration, were about connecting with other communities. And that's really the only way to make these impossible things come true. So we're going to talk through kind of the broader design thinking cycle that pairs well with Agile. Of you have your impossible idea, who needs to be involved? How are you going to develop it? What are you going to learn from it? And how are you going to assess it and tell if it's working, and what do you do in the next step? And so we're going to walk through some of the practical strategies of how that occurred over the course of ASU Sync. With that, I'll lob it back to Kyle for the overview.
Absolutely. So, in this case, we're using ASU Sync. Oh, could you hit the play on the little video thing there?
Yeah.
Thank you. So because this is a big thing that a lot of us have kind of experienced in one part of another, but it's also such an excellent example, because when we imagine things like ASU Sync, it's not just a Zoom experience, but rather it is so many different pieces and parts. And at a logistical level, it involved, virtually every corner of the campus, both physically and digitally. That it was a bringing together of groups across, in particular, we had groups in UTO, working with service delivery groups, the Experience Center, engineering, right? Bringing together, to provide this technology capability, engaging with colleges and units across the institution, collaborating deeply with Ed Plus to help provide professional development for our faculty. And what this represented was an increasing or a massive shift in terms of how we think about the ways that learning takes place. And it involves so many pieces and parts that it becomes this really great example of how a university can pivot in a short period of time, not by kind of creating a lot of heavy infrastructure or a lot of, I should say, a lot of kind of decision trees and things like that, but rather people making decisions, coming together, understanding what the problems are and working together to resolve them, and really beginning to move that forward. And so we're just kind of using this as our kind of example case to dissect in our conversation today. But the idea being that let's take the lessons learned from this experience and use it to apply it in so many other scenarios going forward. Maybe Allison, you could talk about kind of the identifying community component.
Absolutely. I just want to add that the great thing about ASU Sync was it forced Agile. There was no time for perfect. It was make those decisions, test them out, move forward, and keep going. And so, come on, slides. So the first step of that was identifying who is our community, who is going to be impacted, how can we bring those voices together, and how can we invite them to have a seat at the table so that they can be heard, and if they chose, that they could be involved in whatever capacity that they were able. And so as you're thinking through your impossible idea, some guiding questions can be: who will be impacted? What voices are at the table? What level of involvement can they be in? Oftentimes when we're seeking out, especially like students, one of the things that I can hear is, oh, well, I don't know, they might slow us down. But you can invite everybody to the table and include them in a way that you can still keep moving forward and you can still stay agile. And what are the skill sets that are needed? So in ASU Sync, we had, as Kyle listed, all those departments that were necessary to make this possible. So that's our first component, is identifying community. And what do you do once you have that community, Kyle?
Well, Allison, we got to develop that or garner that support from those collaborators, engaging others to really contribute in meaningful ways to moving this effort forward. A big part of that's understanding that different groups, different people, they have different needs, different motivations, different levels of contribution. And so the opportunity is to create as many kind of on-ramps as we can for people to be a part of this process, to be able to see themselves in this big idea, to see themselves in this challenge, and understand how I can contribute to it and how I can help move it forward. And so along those lines, I think there are some key questions around that can help guide kind of securing that support. One is to think about, like, what are the benefits to your partners, to your collaborators? How do they kind of get involved or benefit from the outcomes or from this work? There's also, what are the benefits to the institution, right? So understanding that this isn't just something that happens at a local level, that is something that happens globally, that it changes the institution, it creates new opportunities that maybe haven't been present before. And the other thing to think about is, like, possibly what are the benefits beyond ASU? So how does this transform higher education? How does this transform learning globally? And then the other thing to think about is that, also is considering the leadership of the university or the leadership of the groups or units, what role do they need to play in helping make some of these decisions? Because many cases, they too need to be participants in this at one level or another. And it's important to specifically recognize or secure support from those leadership groups. So once we've kind of garnered support, from our collaborators that we have our big idea, that we've kind of developed our community, and we have them all buying in. Next is time to get to work, right, Allison?
Absolutely. And in the context of ASU Sync, because I see so many faces here, or screenshots, there were a lot of folks within UTO that were involved in Sync, but there were a lot out in the colleges that were taking volunteer time to help towards these global Sync efforts that were outside of their, normal realm of practice, but they understood the benefit at the global level, at their own personal level, and how their own faculty and students would be impacted. So even if it wasn't something that was assigned, their leadership gave them that support, and they had that option to get to work. And as we bring these volunteers in, and folks that, to these impossible ideas where they might not, have the time, you have to honor the time that they do have. So when you're in this work, it's really important to identify, like, what are the essential components that need to be done to make this impossible idea come true, right? What are the expectations? What are the boundaries? And where can we, find resources that might previously have seemed impossible to attain? And a large part of that, especially with, engaging in something that's brand new, is retaining that sense of purpose and joy. What are we going to all benefit from this? At the end of the day, when we walk away from this project and it's done, what are we going to be proud of? And how do you know?
Exactly. And so part of that is analyzing the outcome of that work. And so part of, understanding or measuring, to what degree is it no longer impossible? To what degree have we achieved our vision? And one of the other parts that we don't often think about is really planning in ahead of time what happens when we're successful. Let's not be surprised by it. We're work towards it. Let's have a plan for, hey, when this is the greatest thing, then where do we go from there? How do we continue to iterate and improve? And so it's important that we are reflective, that we look back on that process, begin to say, okay, what are the things we learned from that, both good and bad? How can we use that to improve? But also to recognize where are the places where we've created new opportunities, so that it wasn't just a one-time change that happened in one place, but rather we are really embracing this change that can kind of create a whole new way of thinking for us going forward. So as we begin to analyze the results, sometimes those are in kind of metrics or numbers. We can look at kind of engagement levels. And so with ASU Sync, we can say, well, it was nearly 1,000 classrooms, and it involved 13,000 classes, and virtually, every immersive student. And we can look at kind of that at a metrics driven level, but we can also look at it in the stories that come from that, the stories of resilience that we've been kind of telling through our newsroom, the stories that we've all heard from our friends and neighbors and their experiences throughout this past year. And it's those two are important, because really for us to analyze the outcome of a big idea of a major change, it comes through the eyes of those that we support. It comes through the eyes of our learners, through the eyes of our faculty, and what are their perspectives, and what did that look like? So as we kind of analyze the results, some guiding questions to think about are, what does success look like? So that as we're planning ahead, how do we know when we got there, right? So what does that kind of goalpost look like? How are we measuring that? And as I mentioned, sometimes that's in metrics, other times that's in stories. And when do we actually do that analysis? Because it's not something that has to wait until the end. It's something that can be a part of an iterative process. As we look at Agile as a process, this is highly iterative. So that analysis is all the time happening. Thinking about kind of what Warwick was talking about, his big impossible idea of bringing students into that kind of evaluation process is part of thinking about how do we make that analysis not a one-time thing, but an all-the-time thing. And then the other part of it is really kind of planning with success in mind. So how do we look forward and say, okay, when this works, when we get this kind of to meeting our goals, then where do we take it from there? And so that kind of transitions us, I think, into our time to soar, right, Allison?
I think so. We've got our ideas, we've got our cycle, and the great thing about this process is it's never done. So Marissa, what should we do next?
So if you were listening to Christine at the beginning of the conference, and you've already kind of run through this in the first breakout that you've had, I shared a copy for exploring agile experiences that I thought we could just kind of type right into. I'll also share my screen just so we can kind of follow along. So the idea that we want to briefly get through is, and actually Allison and Kyle, you did a really good job, like really pumping us up for what our strengths are. So when we think about what are we good at, if you have this impossible idea or something that you're trying to work towards, the first place you want to start is what are we great at? And that was identified pretty clearly, right? Like we had teammates that were jumping in, especially I'm in Teachers College right now. We had people working, you know, in the evenings, trying to get people onboarded and familiar with what our process looked like. So what were we great at? What are our dynamic capabilities? So go ahead and type in some strengths that you felt you experienced maybe during this sync experience over the last year. What was undeniably, you know, a benefit that you already had that existed as you continued on? And then as we kind of got a few months into the sync experience, what were the opportunities? I know there were some programs that even decided that they were going to stay sync programs because it allowed students an in-person experience, but also if they weren't near a campus, that they could still attend without committing to ASU Online or something like that. But basically, what was the opportunity? We weren't limited now that we had the experience. So go ahead and start typing in, just again, based on this presentation, what were some of the strengths? What are some of the opportunities with sync that you see and are experiencing? And then aspirations. So for a future version, what could this look like? What did this open the door for? And those are some of the aspirations that we're looking to you. Don't be shy. I think there's 93 people in here that we can get typing and sharing some ideas, because again, we're looking to you all to say, what are our next steps here? What is the opportunity in this sync experience? And then finally, what are the meaningful outcomes? Kyle did a really good job talking about measuring. What does measurement look like? What does quality of this look like? What is attainable? And what are our key performance indicators that we can work towards as we expand what sync can look like? Because I don't necessarily foresee it going away in looking at that specific example. So please go ahead and start filling in these areas. Also, sorry, to wrap up results, how do we know we're making our intended impact? And this kind of goes back to what our strengths are, right? What is our charter? Who are we reaching out to? Who are we making things possible for? And I think that's really important when we think of our results and measuring results for what we're doing. So we've got some strengths, some opportunities, aspirations are getting filled in. So thank you. You're welcome to unmute also. We're happy to hear. If we want to go kind of square by square, I'll just start with strengths. So quick adoption and cross-group communication collaboration. So that was huge across units, departments, and that was definitely a strength that we carry here. Culture of collaboration, really emphasizing people that stepped up. It was not really in anyone's job description per se to maybe, you know, pulled together as much as we did, but it managed to get done. Uncoupled technology, I skipped one. Proactive, had method in place prior to the need. So that kind of anticipation, ideas of what the options available to us were. Motivated employees, empathy. Any other strengths anyone wants to add verbally? Okay, so for opportunities, reaching learners in the community who aren't able to come to campus. So there are certain programs, obviously people don't live in the area. We have instructors going to these locations, and now this gives us an opportunity to reach more students. So that is a huge opportunity. Trusting all backgrounds within the ASU community. I really liked Allison's explanation. We didn't have time to get it perfect. So we're really putting value, and this is the ultimate trust in our teams and our staff to say, this is what we need, and we need all hands on deck to get us there. Coordination across units, ability to respond to uncertainty. So opportunity to make stronger services better than serve our customers. So the opportunity is to become better at it, right? You had only so much time, was it 100 days to put this together? And then we are now at the place where we can kind of sit back and look at what are the opportunities? How do we make this better? How do we move forward with it? Aspirations, scaling and changing for specific use cases, especially rural learners. What is the opportunity there? So that for future iterations of an agile process, where is the opportunity? And then finally, the results. What is it that we can measure? Oh, we have a few more. Protection of sensitive data, access to quality higher ed. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm trying to follow along. Someone's still typing. Access quality higher ed learning experiences from anywhere, and then improvements to technology. So what does that look like, and what are we measuring against? And that would be our results section. So from where we are now to where we want to be, what are some key milestones that will help us get there? What are the meaningful outcomes and learning experiences that we can glean as we progress to an end result that's never really ending here. It's just more changing based on the need of the students that we serve. So the results we have: shared need across units, realization for individuals, how they learn best, freedom to participate, how it works best, detect and recover from failure, wealth of resources to use and build upon, higher student retention and success, higher employee satisfaction, clear objectives. These are awesome. So keep adding to these. Everyone will have access to this. It was a great demonstration, especially with Sync specifically, because I think we all felt it in some way, shape, or form. And now it's interesting to see how something that we never knew we needed exists now, and what the possibility for this type of system in place. So thank you for adding content here. All right, I want to thank Allison and Kyle for this experience and taking us through a little bit of a deeper dive of what it was like to set up Sync in such a short time, and discussing some of the future plans as we move forward.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We hope all your Agile dreams come true.